The refugee camp on the edge of New London was filled with voices that did not belong to Earth. The Great War beyond the stars had scattered many species, and now ships carried the survivors to any world that would take them. Earth, battered but proud, had opened its gates. Humanity had suffered, yet they still gave what little they had. Captain Elias Morgan stood in the middle of the makeshift shelter, watching as volunteers handed out food and blankets. He was used to the faces of soldiers, rough and scarred, but here he saw the eyes of children, the trembling hands of the displaced, and the defeated shoulders of those who had lost everything. It was then he noticed her. Among the crowd was a girl unlike the others. She was small, thin from hunger, her furred ears flicking at every sound, her long tail curled protectively around her legs. Her people, the Vulpine, were known across the stars for their agility and bright spirits, but war had stolen all brightness from her. When one of the volunteers tried to pat her head gently, she recoiled like she had been struck. Her golden eyes burned with defiance, though her hands shook. Elias saw it clearly. This was not just hunger or fear. It was pride, shattered but unyielding. He approached slowly, careful not to loom over her. In his hand he carried a piece of warm bread, steam rising into the cold air. "You should eat," he said gently. The girl's ears twitched. She looked at him sharply, her tail bristling. "I don't need a human master." The words were sharp, spoken with the bitterness of someone who had been owned before. Elias stopped in his tracks. He could have argued, could have told her she was mistaken, but he only extended the bread and said, "I'm not your master. Just someone making sure you're safe." For a long moment she stared at him, her claws flexing nervously. Then, with a quick motion, she snatched the bread from his hand. She did not thank him. Instead, she turned away slightly, breaking it into tiny bites and eating with slow, careful movements. Elias did not push her. He simply remained nearby watching over the group, though his eyes often returned to her. The other refugees seemed to treat her with a strange mixture of pity and distance. They whispered her name, Kyla. Perhaps she had been taken by slavers before. Perhaps she had seen more cruelty than most. Whatever the reason, Kayla trusted no one. As night fell, the camp grew quiet. Families huddled together, children clung to their parents, and soldiers kept watch at the perimeter. Kayla sat alone, her tail wrapped around her body like a shield, staring at the firelight as though daring it to hurt her. Elias found himself walking past her again. Something about the girl tugged at him. Not just her defiance, but the way she sat so rigidly, as if she would shatter if she ever let herself relax. "You'll freeze sitting out here all night," he said softly. She didn't look at him. "I've slept in colder places." Her voice carried the weight of too many lonely nights, too many dark cages. Elias sighed, pulling off his jacket and placing it beside her. "Then at least take this." Kayla's ears flicked again. She didn't move for a long time, but when he walked away, he saw from the corner of his eye that she slowly pulled the jacket around her shoulders. For the first time that night, her shivering eased, and though she would never admit it, Kayla slept a little more peacefully beneath the fabric that carried the quiet scent of coffee and iron. Elias watched from afar, a strange heaviness settling in his chest. He did not know why this one girl mattered so much to him already, but something told him that Kayla's story had only just begun, and somehow, his was now tied to it. The next morning, the camp was alive with movement. Refugees lined up for food, children ran through the narrow aisles of tents, and the guards changed shifts with tired eyes. Humanity had little, but they shared it anyway. Some gave bread, some gave blankets, and some simply gave a smile to those who had forgotten how to smile. Kyla, however, did not smile. She sat apart from the others, her back against a supply crate, ears twitching at every sound. Her tail curled tightly around her waist like armor. The human jacket Elias had given her was folded neatly beside her, though she never admitted she had worn it through the night. When children approached her out of curiosity, fascinated by her furred ears and bright eyes, she bared her teeth in warning. The children ran back, startled, and Kayla's chest ached, though she did not understand why. To her, Closeness was danger. Warmth was a trap. Every gentle hand was just another chain waiting to lock around her wrist. Elias watched from a distance. He had seen soldiers with the same eyes, hard, untrusting, built from scars no one could see. Yet Kayla was still so young. She should have been laughing, playing, living her life. Instead, she was a creature bristling at kindness, unsure if freedom was even real. At midday, Elias approached her again with food. He placed it down on the crate beside her without a word. Kayla eyed it suspiciously. "You think I cannot feed myself?" she muttered. Elias shook his head. "I think you shouldn't have to fight alone anymore." Her ears twitched. "That's what humans always say. Then they take. Always taking. Always keeping." Her voice cracked with bitterness, but underneath it was a raw wound. Something Elias could feel but not heal. He crouched so they were at eye level. "I won't touch you. I won't order you. I just want you to eat because you deserve to." The word deserve struck her in a place she had tried to bury. Did she deserve anything? After being dragged from her home, after being caged, after being called an animal by her captors, Kayla had stopped believing she was worth more than survival. She hissed under her breath, but she took the food anyway. This time, though, she ate slower, watching Elias out of the corner of her eye. That evening, as the firelight flickered across the camp, Kayla overheard the humans talking. Some were laughing, others were tired, but none of them treated the refugees as lesser. She listened as an old woman gave her bread away, as a soldier carried water for someone too weak to stand. It confused her. She had known humans only by their reputation, dangerous, wild, unbreakable. They were called death worlders by the galaxy, feared for their strength and their stubbornness. Yet here they were, giving without asking for return. Later that night, she found herself staring at Elias again. He sat with other volunteers, his voice calm, his laughter easy. He did not look like a master. He did not look like a man who wanted to own anyone. Still, her pride burned. When he noticed her gaze and smiled faintly, she turned her head away sharply, ears flat. The barrier between them was high, built from years of chains and cruelty. Kayla did not know if she could ever climb over it. Trust was a dangerous thing. Trust got you hurt. And yet, when thunder rumbled in the distance and the camp grew restless, her tail tightened around her, and she caught herself glancing toward Elias's steady figure. Something in her wanted to believe. Something in her wanted to rest. But believing was a risk, and risks had nearly broken her before. So she whispered to herself, a vow meant to keep her safe. "I am not a pet. I will never be one again." But even as she said it, her eyes drifted, back to the man who had given her a jacket without asking anything in return. The storm came without warning. One moment the night sky was clear, and the next it was alive with flashes of light and the deep growl of thunder. Rain hammered down on the refugee camp, soaking tents and flooding the paths between them. Children cried, and some of the younger ones huddled against their parents. Inside the main shelter, a fire crackled weakly against the wind. Most of the refugees pressed together for warmth. But Kayla sat stiffly on the far end of the couch, her tail wrapped around her knees, her ears pinned flat to her head. Every clap of thunder made her body flinch, though she tried to mask it with a low growl. Elias noticed her from across the room. He was helping distribute dry blankets, his hands busy, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. The storm did not bother him. He had lived through battles louder than this. But Kayla was different. She trembled each time the windows rattled, even as she bit her lip to keep it hidden. Finally, when his work was done, he crossed the room and sat nearby. Not too close, but close enough to speak. "You don't like storms?" His voice was quiet, careful. Kayla's head snapped toward him, amber eyes blazing. "I am not afraid," she hissed. Her claws dug into the couch cushion, betraying her words. Her tail twitched violently, as if it wanted to lash out at him for even noticing. Elias leaned back, unbothered. "I didn't say you were. I just thought maybe you'd rather not sit alone while the sky is trying to tear itself apart." Kayla glared at him, ears burning with shame. She hated that he could see through her. She hated even more the way his calmness made her feel small and childish. "Stop looking at me like that," she snapped. Her voice cracked. "I'm not your pet. I'm not some animal for you to comfort," her words echoed in the shelter. A few nearby turned their heads, startled by her outburst, but Elias didn't flinch. He only nodded, his gaze steady. "Okay, you're not." He turned his eyes away then, pulling a book from his coat pocket and flipping it open. The message was clear. He wasn't going to argue with her. He wasn't going to claim her. He was simply going to sit there whether she accepted his presence or not. Kayla's breath came fast. She hated the silence that followed. Hated the storm outside, hated the way her chest felt tight. Part of her wanted to lash out again, to drive him away before he could hurt her like others had. But another part, a weaker, trembling part, felt something strange, longing. Her claws flexed against the cushion. She told herself she didn't need him. She told herself she didn't need anyone. Yet her eyes kept sliding back to him, to the way he sat so calmly, shoulders steady, unshaken by thunder. When lightning split the sky and thunder crashed a heartbeat later, her body jolted. A soft sound escaped her throat before she could stop it. Elias didn't look up from his book. He only said, "You don't have to pretend with me. Not here." Her ears twitched at his words. Not a command. Not pity, just truth. She swallowed hard, her pride screaming at her to stay distant. She wanted to shout again, to repeat her vow, "I am not a pet." But the words caught in her throat, because the truth was simple and she could not deny it. She was tired, tired of standing alone, tired of pretending she was stronger than she felt, tired of fighting when all she wanted, just for one night, was peace. Kayla hugged her knees tighter, trembling as another crash of thunder shook the shelter. Her mind warred with itself, pride against need, fear against hope. And as the storm raged outside, she whispered under her breath, so softly Elias barely heard it, "I don't need you." But the way her voice broke told him everything. The storm did not pass quickly. Hours dragged on, thunder rolling over the camp like the growl of some giant beast. Rain hammered the roof until it sounded like the whole sky might collapse. People tried to sleep, but many stayed awake, whispering prayers in their own languages. Kayla could not rest. Her body was rigid, her claws sunk into the fabric of the couch. Each crack of thunder made her ears flatten against her head. Each flash of lightning lit up the fear she tried to bury. She hated it. She hated being seen like this. She hated being weak. Elias sat a short distance away, the soft light of his book glowing faintly in the dim shelter. He had not moved since her outburst. He had not tried to touch her, had not pressed her to speak. He simply sat with quiet patience like a mountain unmoved by the storm. That calmness unsettled her. Most people either forced comfort on her or walked away entirely. But Elias did neither. He stayed, offering nothing but his presence. And it made something inside her ache. She remembered cages. She remembered chains. She remembered the cruel laughter of those who had called her pet as they pulled at her ears and tail, mocking her helplessness. Every kindness she had once trusted had turned to cruelty in the end. That was why she built her walls. That was why she kept her distance. Yet here was this human sitting a few steps away, never demanding, never forcing, simply waiting. Another thunderclap shook the walls. Kayla flinched hard, curling tighter into herself. The storm rattled not just the shelter, but her heart. She wanted to scream at herself for feeling so small, but no amount of pride stopped the trembling. Her eyes flicked to Elias again. He turned a page in his book, calm, steady, his breathing even. The sight burned in her chest. Why isn't he afraid? Why does he sit so calmly while the sky is breaking apart? She wanted that steadiness. She wanted it so badly her body leaned toward him before her mind caught up. With a frustrated growl, she forced herself to stay put. Her thoughts battled inside her head. Do not move. Do not submit. Do not crawl into someone's arms like you once did. You will regret it. You will be hurt again. But another voice whispered beneath the storm. You are tired, so tired. He has not lied. He has not taken, just once. Let yourself rest. Her tail twitched violently. Her ears burned. Her pride screamed at her to stay still. But when another bolt of lightning split the sky and the thunder cracked so loudly the shelter shook, Kayla's control broke. Before she could stop herself, her body was moving. Her bare feet padded softly across the floor, carrying her toward him. Every step was a war. Her claws dug into her palms, her tail lashed behind her. But she did not stop. Elias looked up just as she reached the couch where he sat. His eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing. Kayla glared at him, cheeks burning, ears flat against her skull. Her voice came out sharp, defensive, almost angry. "I told you, I'm not your pet," she spat. The words trembled in the air between them. For a moment, Elias simply looked at her, calm and quiet. He didn't move, didn't reach for her, didn't argue. He only closed his book and waited. Kayla's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the storm. Her claws flexed at her sides. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. But more than anything, she wanted warmth. And before her pride could stop her, Kayla made her choice. For a heartbeat, Kayla stood frozen in front of him. Her pride screamed at her to step back, to turn away, to hide her trembling. But the storm outside tore another roar across the sky, and something inside her snapped. With a sharp, almost frustrated motion, she climbed onto the couch beside Elias. Her movements were stiff, her claws twitching nervously, her ears flat. She did not ask permission. She would not ask. Then, with a suddenness that surprised even herself, Kayla curled into his lap. It was not graceful. She half fell, half pressed herself against him, burying her face in the fabric of his coat so he could not see the wetness in her eyes. Her tail wrapped around her body tightly, as if still trying to shield her from the world. But despite all that, her small frame pressed close to him, shaking with each clap of thunder. Elias froze for only a moment, his breath catching. Then he relaxed. He didn't trap her with his arms. He didn't stroke her fur or whisper that everything would be all right. He simply sat there, letting her curl against him, letting her weight settle as if she belonged there. Kayla's heart raced. She hated herself for doing this. She hated how much she wanted it. But as she listened to his heartbeat, steady and calm beneath her ear, she could not pull away. Her voice came out muffled against his chest. "I told you. I'm not your pet." Elias's answer was quiet, steady, like the earth itself. "I know." Kayla's claws dug lightly into his coat, a mix of anger and fear trembling inside her. "Then why let me do this? Why let me sit here like some creature needing comfort?" Elias lowered his eyes, his expression unreadable. "Because you're not a creature. You're a person, and sometimes people need someone to lean on. That doesn't make you owned. It doesn't make you less." Kayla shook her head furiously, pressing her face deeper into his chest so he could not see her tears. "I hate this. I hate needing anyone." Elias did not argue. He only whispered, "Needing someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." The word struck her like a blow. Human. She was not human. She was Vulpine, born from a world that was burning, from a people scattered and enslaved. She had been caged, mocked, treated like an exotic thing to be displayed. But in his voice, in his calm tone, there was no insult. Only warmth. Her breathing slowed. The storm outside still raged, but here, pressed against him, it felt distant. His steady presence grounded her. She hated it. She needed it. Both truths tangled in her chest until she no longer knew which was stronger. Minutes passed in silence. She didn't move, and neither did he. For once there were no demands, no chains, no cruel laughter, just stillness. Slowly, Kayla's claws relaxed, no longer clutching at his coat. Her tail loosened, falling across his lap instead of wrapping her body. She realized, with a pang of fear and something like relief, that she was letting go just a little. When lightning flashed and thunder followed, her body flinched again. But this time, Elias's steady warmth kept her from trembling as much. She found herself listening to the rhythm of his heart, steady like a drum in the storm. And though her pride still burned, though her throat still ached with unshed words, she did not move away. For the first time in years, Kayla allowed herself to rest, not as a pet, not as a possession, but as a girl who desperately needed to feel safe. And Elias, true to his word, gave her nothing but that. Safety. The storm did not end quickly. Hours turned into the slow crawl of night, and still the rain hammered the roof. Yet for Kayla, curled in Elias's lap, time began to feel different. The fear that had once clung to her was fading, not because the storm was weaker, but because his presence was steady. She listened to the rhythm of his heart. It was strong and calm, each beat a reminder that he was real and solid in a world that often felt like it could vanish at any moment. His warmth seeped into her, easing the tightness in her chest. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to close her eyes, even if only halfway. Her pride whispered cruelly in her mind, "You are pathetic. You said you would never need anyone. Now look at you, curled like a child in the lap of a human." But another voice, quieter, argued back, "You are tired. You have carried too much alone. For once, let yourself breathe." Elias said nothing. He did not disturb her, did not try to comfort her with words she might reject. His silence was the comfort. It told her he respected her choice, that he would not use her weakness against her. That silence gave her more safety than any chain of promises ever could. After a long while, her voice came out softly, breaking the quiet. "Do you mean it?" Elias tilted his head slightly. "Mean what?" "That I'm free." Her words trembled, almost as if she feared the answer. "That no one owns me anymore." Elias did not hesitate. His voice was calm, firm, carrying no doubt. "Yes, you are free. Always." Her throat tightened painfully at his certainty. She wanted to believe him. Oh, how she wanted to believe. But memories clawed at her, hands pulling at her fur, voices laughing, chains rattling as she was dragged into cages. "You are ours," they had told her. "You belong to us." A quiet whimper escaped her lips before she could stop it. She buried her face deeper against his chest, ashamed of the sound. Elias's steady breathing did not change. He did not comment. He simply stayed. That alone made her tears come faster, silent trails down her cheeks. For years she had been forced to hide every tear, to wear defiance like armor. But now, here in the dark storm, she let them fall. Her claws uncurled completely, releasing his coat. Her tail, once wrapped tight, lay relaxed across his legs. She realized she had not felt this way since before the war, since before her world burned and her people scattered. It was not ownership. It was not captivity. It was something she had almost forgotten the name of. Safety. Kayla whispered into the silence, barely audible. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Elias blinked, looking down at her. "Because no one should face storms alone." Simple words, but they struck something deep inside her, something fragile she had locked away for so long. Her chest ached, not from fear this time, but from the sudden memory of how much she missed being cared for, how much she missed believing in kindness. Her body grew heavier against him as her strength gave way to exhaustion. She wanted to fight it, wanted to cling to her pride, but the warmth of his chest, the steady beat of his heart, and the quiet safety of his presence lulled her deeper. Slowly, against her own stubbornness, Kayla's eyes closed completely. Her breathing slowed, and for the first time since the war, had torn her life apart. She fell asleep, not as a prisoner, not as a possession, but as a girl who had finally found a place where she could rest. And Elias, true to his word, did nothing but let her sleep. The storm had passed by morning. The sky was pale, washed clean by the heavy rain, and the scent of wet earth filled the air. Sunlight broke through the clouds in thin golden streams, touching the cabin walls with a soft glow. Kayla stirred slowly, her body heavy from sleep. For a moment she forgot where she was. She expected the cold floor of a cage, the sharp pull of chains on her wrists. But instead, she felt warmth, softness, and the steady rise and fall of a chest beneath her cheek. Her eyes opened. She blinked against the light and found Elias still there, leaning against the wooden wall. His arms were wrapped loosely around her, his head tilted slightly as if he had dozed off without meaning to. His face looked tired, but peaceful. For a long while, Kayla simply watched him. She had fallen asleep in his care, and nothing bad had happened. No one had struck her, no one had dragged her away, no one had called her property. She had slept freely, and she had woken freely. Her heart trembled. The wall she had built inside her mind, thick and cold, had begun to crack. Quietly, she shifted and sat up, her tail brushing against the floor. Elias stirred at the movement, his eyes opening. When he saw her awake, a faint smile touched his lips. "Morning," he said, his voice rough but gentle. Kayla hesitated, her throat tight with emotion she could not name. "You stayed." Elias tilted his head slightly confused. "Of course, where else would I go?" Her chest tightened at those words. To her, staying had always meant obligation, chains, ownership. But to him, staying was simply choice. He chose to be there. Her gaze dropped to her hands. They were no longer trembling, no longer curled into fists. She whispered, almost afraid to say it aloud. I dreamed of home." Elias's eyes softened. "Tell me about it." The words spilled before she could stop them. She spoke of her village, of the way the air smelled after rain, of the laughter of her people, of the fires that burned at night when they told stories. She spoke of her mother's hands, her father's voice, her younger brother who had chased fireflies with her under the stars. Her voice broke at times, but Elias never interrupted. He listened as though each word was precious. When her story ended, silence filled the room. Kayla wiped her eyes quickly, ashamed of her tears. But Elias only said softly, "It sounds beautiful. I'm sorry it was taken from you." Her throat burned with unspoken pain, but his words eased some of the weight. For years, no one had allowed her grief to exist. They had only demanded her obedience, her silence. Yet here was a human who carried her sorrow with her, even if only for a moment. Slowly, Kayla looked at him, truly looked. His face was tired, his body scarred, his hands rough. He was no savior from a storybook, no flawless hero. And yet, he had given her something greater than rescue. He had given her freedom. A decision formed in her heart, quiet but strong. She would not waste this gift. She stood, her legs unsteady but firm. "I don't know what comes next," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "But I won't run anymore. Not from the past, not from the future." Elias rose as well, his eyes steady on hers. "Whatever comes, you won't face it alone." For a moment, Kayla could not speak. The promise in his voice was simple, but it felt like sunlight after years of darkness. Slowly, a small, fragile smile curved her lips, the first true smile she had allowed herself since her world had fallen apart. The storm outside was gone, but within her, a different storm was finally quiet. And as the morning light grew brighter, Kayla took her first step into a new dawn, not as a slave, not as a fugitive, but as herself. Free.